Good deal. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, thank you. You know what I find really interesting, that when parents come into these events, you always sit where you tell your kids not to sit. You always just, filter in the back and kind of slowly filter up front. That's great, I appreciate it, thank you. I want to invite you that if, I know you're busy and coming out for a program like this is time consuming. If you have to leave early, you will not offend me. So I want to read this as I'm going to read it again. Your district offers a free mental health checkup in the fall called Teen Screen for grades 7, 9, and 11. So as you leave here tonight, there'll be counselors in the back of the auditorium providing cards for you to take home with more information. So if you leave early, I wanted to make sure that you did get this. Thank you for coming. I'm always excited when parents come out. And the old me, my ego would have been like, yeah, you're a school about going. I know the parents that are here tonight are not necessarily the parents I need to talk to. And I also want you to understand, as I'm talking tonight, know that I'm generalizing. I'm not saying you. I am generalizing. But I want to share this with you. I think it's really important that the school provides this. And I don't care, hey, some people, for whatever reason, it's a nice night, we're going to barbecue, I don't get family time, we have the night, or I don't want to come, or we're just, fine, whatever. I think the more we talk about it, the less stigma, the more permission we're giving people to say, you know what, this is a really important topic that we need to start talking about tonight. So thank you for coming. I know that you probably look at me and you're like, dude, you don't look like the type of guy they'd bring in to come talk to us. I know. I look like the type of guy you probably tell your kids not to talk to. But it was pretty interesting. Dr. Hagen and I were just having a conversation, and he said something that I always say in my head, but I'm never allowed to say in public. He said, you know, one of the reasons why we're successful is because we don't give a anymore. I said, Dr. Hagen, you just said what I always think. I am a man. Do you want a good picture or no? I'm a man that lives with mental illness, proudly. And I know some of you are like, proud, people don't say that, people don't talk about that. I want to get right into it. I have a lot of material. But 6 years ago, I went through a divorce. I wish it on nobody. I was married to 17 years, the most beautiful woman in the world. And 6 years ago, I went through a divorce. And quickly, here's what happened. I found myself looking in the mirror one day. As I was looking in the mirror, I said to myself, I said, what did I have to do with this? And I wonder if that was like the first time in my life that I was like really taking responsibility. You know, I mean, I could have blamed it on her, I could have blamed it on family, I could have blamed it on money, I could have blamed it on this. I think sometimes we do that, especially when we're young. But I looked in the mirror that one day and I said, what did I have to do with this? And at that moment, I realized that my mental illness was much greater than I ever respected it to be. And at that point, I decided, okay, I get it. I get it. And so I say proudly because, well, let me ask you a question. Who's the hardest person to get to know? That's right. That's right. And so people ask me all the time, hey, Jeff, you've been talking to teenagers for 26 years. What do you think is the most important thing that we need to give young people? I don't even hesitate. I say self-esteem. And as parents, I think it's important we tell our kids, hey, you're smart, you're strong, you're beautiful, you're capable, you can do this. What do our words mean if they don't believe it themselves? And so let's go back to that, who's the hardest person to get to know? Here, you parents, professionals. You're saying the same thing. Imagine our kids that, they're teenagers. They're stuck on stupid. They're supposed to be trying to figure things out. I think it's important. Our kids got to get to know who they are and be comfortable with who they're not. But yet, one of the biggest problems I'm going to talk about, expectations from parents, expectations from a successful, well-to-do, distinguished school community. I think parents like, well, I want my kid to be a doctor. I want my kid to go to Stanford or Harvard. But then your kid's like, Mom, I don't want to go to Harvard. Oh, no, you're going to go to Harvard. I don't want. And so, you're pushing them. They don't want to. They're conflicted. I think there's going to be a big balance here in parenting, raising self-esteem, knowing what's right, not necessarily for you as the parent, but what is right for your child and what they want. And I think when it really boils down to it, number one, self-esteem. And now we're growing up in a world where I think you'd probably agree. Technology today, it's not going away. It's here to stay. Yet, we have given our kids this technology that they are not mature enough to be able to, think about it. You got to be 21 to drink, you got to be 21 to gamble, you got to be 21 to buy cigarettes, and all these can be addictions, but you could be 12 and all of a sudden now you're becoming addicted and there's no rules. And their frontal lobe is not mature enough to handle the responsibilities or the emotional stress that this brings to them. And so the balance is simply this. If your child spends more than 4 or 5 hours a day in a 24-hour period on their smartphone, they're 70% more likely to have major depression in their life. The safe zone is 1 to 2 hours. I don't even turn my phone on until 9:30, 10 in the morning. Because many of you know, the moment you turn on your phone, all of a sudden it's OMG, he did that. OMG, I can't believe my sister said that. Or, SMH, she did this, he said that. It's going down tomorrow. And then it's like 9 o'clock. You're like, oh my gosh, I was supposed to be at school at 7:45. I'm late. And then you come down and you're like, honey, why are you late? Leave me alone, Mom. Like, oh my gosh, were you on your phone? No. And so what they think is 15 minutes really was like an hour and a half. This is not changing, though. This is here to stay. So here's the challenge that we have as parents. We have to find the balance. We have to have boundaries. And our kids are not mature enough to put the boundaries on themselves. So you have to step in and really figure out. And then, so here's the other argument. Well, so Jeff, if you're talking about this, but yet in schools we're giving our kids the Chromebook and our kids have iPads, so if technology isn't great, yet our schools are giving, Jeff, this doesn't make sense. No, you see, here's the thing. The smartphone, Snapface, and Insta produces this dopamine effect. And it's kind of like, I want more, I want more, I want more. No kid sits in math class on their Chromebook or in English writing a paper on Shakespeare getting the dopamine effect by writing a paper. So there's a difference. The other thing that bothers me is we say, we should start school later and the kids should get more sleep. No, the kids should get more sleep. You know what all of this comes down to? It's a parenting problem. Don't hate me. It's a parenting problem. Parents need to really, and please let me say, I know parenting today is harder than I think it's ever been. I also think being a teenager today is harder than it's ever been. And so this is here to stay. And we need to find out the balance in how we let this be a part of our lives in a really positive way, and the boundaries to prevent it from overcoming and taking. Essentially, my TED Talk was simply this: online is harming one's mental health. Social interaction is benefiting one's mental health. And so the balance, a little bit less and a little bit more. Okay. Mental illness. I think this, with the opioid epidemic, greatest healthcare crisis of our time. Let me cover this because I don't know if I'm going to cover it. So I meet a lot of parents that we don't want to talk about mental illness. We don't acknowledge mental health. I think you need to start. And I don't like to say mental health, mental illness. I think me being a man that lives with mental illness, I like to say mental hydration, mental wellness, because I think I work on me every day. And our kids, there's going to be so many diagnoses coming about in the next 2 years. I think mental illness is really broad right now. I think you can have gaming addictions, more social media, smartphone. A lot of it's going to come out and we'll be like, oh, whoa. I ask kids every day on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being real high, 1 being low, where's your anxiety? Where's your stress level? And kids are like, well, 8, 9, 12, 13. How present can you be if every day you're living at a 7, 8, 9? You know the 2 words your kids use to describe you? You're tired and angry. And then you say, why don't my kids talk to me? Why would they when you're tired and angry? And so every single day I get up about 5 in the morning, and the first thing I do is I breathe. In yoga, they call it an ujjayi breath. You inhale through your nose, exhale through your nose. Inhale, count of 4, exhale, count of 4. And I have ADD, so I could be, I want pizza. And so I've learned to just, I don't fight that anymore. Now it's like, you get pizza later, come on back. And then I'm just like, inhale peace, exhale love. Because I, as a professional, I want to bring my emotions down to like a 2 or 3. So if something triggers an emotion, I might now be at a 5 or 6, but I can still be professional. I can still respond and not react. That's part of the bipolar. Now imagine if we brought that into our schools. Let's not even talk about mental illness. Let's just talk about anxiety and stress. I think it's safe to say our kids are stressed out. Our kids have high anxiety. And so what if we taught them how to have better coping skills, problem-solving skills, combine that with better communication skills, with greater self-esteem, resiliency? And that's not the school's responsibility. And folks, let me tell you something. The school's not telling me what to say. I wouldn't come here if they did. So I don't really care. I'm just telling you from my 26 years working with teenagers and parents, I deal with teen suicide every day. And I think if we do a better job at home, the schools can do their magnificent job in school, and we can all work together. But I think a lot of this comes from the home. I find this interesting. So teens feel sad when comparing their lives to what they see on social media profiles, Insta, Snapface, Facebook. So what does this lead to? It leads to isolations, feeling of comparison as they see they're not as popular or accepted as others. and it ultimately can lead to depression. So why do you do it? You ever think that people like being miserable? Misery loves company. It's we got to see what everybody else is doing. Well, I wasn't invited. I don't have any more friends. This is something, you think your child, 6 o'clock goes upstairs and 11 o'clock, you're like, I'm so proud of Emily. She's up there doing the homework. No, she ain't. Within 5 minutes of her getting up in her room, she's on Insta. And she's posting pictures from that day and putting filters on it. And in a half hour, if she doesn't have 100 likes, she pulls it down because she thinks that her picture's not worthy of people having a like to it. We are raising kids that live in the here and the now. And folks, it's not their fault. I mean, think about it. You go to an ATM and you get cash. You send a message, you get likes, or someone responds. You know, I tell schools, they ask me quite often, so Jeff, what do you think we should do with cell phones in schools? Get rid of them. Get rid of them. Oh, no, Jeff, I agree. We can't do that. Why? Well, parents would flip out. Why? Well, parents got to give. Jeff, I hear from parents before anything. Like, I don't even hear from my teacher. Right away, something happened 5 minutes ago. It happened. The parents are calling me. Our kids, the parents, the kids. What happened to, why is it's the parent and the child now against the teacher? You remember when we were growing up? And if your teacher called home, I want to respect time, but my mama was big. I grew up in Long Island, New York. Now, I don't know if you know about women in the 80s in Long Island. They had hair. Big hair. And my mom was big with big hair, and she wore makeup. And it wasn't makeup like, oh, look at me, I'm beautiful. My mama looked like Shrek with hair. And I remember, I'll tell you what, I was always a good kid. My teachers liked me, but I'll tell you what, I think my mama was a teacher's best parent. Because if you called home, Miss Yalden, this is Mrs. Jones. Jeffrey, he talks a lot in class. Today's parents like, what do you have against my child? My mama would be like, thank you for calling. If Jeffrey is in school tomorrow, you have my permission to beat his, because it just means I didn't do it hard enough. My mama used to wear this wooden clog. And I remember I'd be upstairs on the other side of the house under the water bit. And we didn't have GPS, but my mom could throw that clog like a boomerang. And she was, and the clog was boom, down the hall, around the corner, up the stairs, down the hall, and it like GPS'd its way into my room under the water bit. And it boom, hit me. And then went back so she can throw it again in case she had to. And I'm thinking, I turned out okay. I think you are not your child's friend. Your child doesn't even want you to be their friend. Be a parent first. I think there's a balance. When my kids were younger, you know my favorite punishment? I'm sweating like crazy. It's hot and humid in Texas. My favorite punishment for my kids used to be, I'm disappointed in you. I would never say that today. I would never say that. I've grown so much, not just as a parent, but as an educator, as a speaker. And I think part of this comes from my wife, Marcia. She's an English teacher, who we got divorced from. English teacher, student council advisor. She lived in a bubble, and she would even admit it. Life was always just rainbows and unicorns and Skittles. I remember one day she came home, she had a bad day. You know how women talk a lot? Hold on, young lady, hold on. Women, they say, speak about 8,000 words a day. Men, we speak about 10,000. I remember Marcia came home one day and the kids this, the administrators this, parents this, it's too sunny out, the car has a speckle of dirt, I don't know, God was in a bad mood or something. And I'm a guy, I was like, baby, listen, we fix everything. I was like, baby, one of the best lessons I ever learned. She's like, do you always have to try and fix everything? I'm venting. I just need you to listen. I was like, noted. So I use that every single day, and personally, professionally. Think about it. We're the parent, we're the authority figure, but they don't want that. Like, I'll prove it to you. If your child is in emotional crisis and they need a trusted adult, the number one trusted adult in a child's life should be the same-sex parent. I want to ask you, if your child needs that trusted adult, they're in a crisis situation, you as mom, dad, would you be the first trusted adult that they would go to? And you might think, I don't know. Yes? No? I don't know. I'm not so concerned about your answer as much as I'm more concerned about this. Does your child have a trusted adult in their life that they can and would go to in the emergency situation? And you might say, you know what, I don't know if she would go to me, but I know her teacher. I know she'd go to her teacher. Don't let that bother you. I would be more proud that they would go to a trusted adult. That, I think, is what's important. I think the greatest denominator that I'm finding out is school year starting. I see a lot of schools really trying to be proactive, bring mental health into schools. We're really trying to talk about suicide prevention, mental health. The greatest denominator, our kids are not asking for help. How do we help a child that we don't know is hurting? And when you talk about the stigma, every person in this room is responsible for the stigma being what it is. Again, I'm not saying you, but the more we talk about it, the more supportive, the more permission we're giving people to say it's okay. You know why your kids don't come to you? One, you're tired and angry. Number two, because you're going to fix it. They don't want you to fix it. They're afraid you're going to judge them. They're afraid that you're not going to validate their thoughts or their feelings or their emotions. You're 15, there's more fish in the sea, don't worry. They don't want to hear that. I've come to learn when I'm talking to people, I like they wanted me to stand on stage. I'm not a stage guy. I like to be in the audience with you. And did you ever notice that when you sit down at the kitchen table together as a family, we just have this conversation, everyone feels a little bit more relaxed. Whereas if you stand up or you're leaning forward, your dad, your mom, they're like, whoa. And so in conversations, here's how I normally handle this. Honey, are you telling me that because you're venting and you just want me to listen? Or are you telling me that and you want my opinion? Rarely do they ever want your opinion. But the more you're willing to listen, the more they're going to see that you're non-judgmental, that you're validating their thoughts and their feelings, that you care. And the more they're going to open up. Our kids today, they don't care about statistics, they don't care about research, they don't care about textbooks. Our kids, there's two questions that you have to answer every day. Two questions we've got to answer every day. Number one, do you care about me? Number two, can I trust you? And I know Jeff, I'm their mom. Sure. But that doesn't answer those two questions. Well, Jeff, it should. It doesn't. And so a lot of us, well, I want this for my child. But your child doesn't want what you want for them. And so that says to them, you don't really care about me, you just care about you. We got to find the balance here. We got to pull them away a little bit, not let this own their self-esteem. But it does. The dopamine effect, the danger zone. If your child spends more than 4 or 5 hours a day on screen time, they're 70% more likely to have major depression in their life. Did I already say that? Let me repeat it. I think it's worth repeating. For the 4th time today, I think. If your child spends more than 4 or 5 hours a day on their smartphone, you'll see why I'm getting to this. They're 70% more likely to have major depression in their life. The smart, 1 to 2 hours. The dopamine effect, safe zone, social media depression is something that they're really studying. The other thing, gaming. I get asked that all the time. Jeff, do you think gaming is affecting people's mental health? It ain't helping. It ain't helping. You saw it 3 weeks ago, I think, in Jacksonville, Florida. Do you know what your kids are doing on gaming consoles? I got to play a game this winter called Grand Theft Auto. Do y'all ever see your kids play that game? Y'all ever play it? I played it for 5 minutes. I had to go take a shower and pray. I think I had 5 prostitutes within 5 minutes. I crashed 3 Ferraris. I killed 70 cops. I said a bad word a lot. Your kids are playing this every day. Every single day. Not only are they playing it, but they talk to people on the headset all over the country. I had a dude a couple weeks come to me. He's like, Jeff, I got a friend that I'm really concerned about. And I'm talking to a young man, I think 8th grade. I'm like, well, who's your friend? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Well, I don't know, one of my gaming friends. What's your friend's name? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I don't. Like his name is like Bluebird Fart 6'3" Blue Orange 2. And so your friend said, well, my friend said like he has nothing to live for and was going to end his life. Here's an 8th grader or your teenager that now has to live with this but can't do anything. And this is some of these kids, their outlet is they're socially isolating themselves, but they have this community online and they're hiding behind a computer. People say these things, now they have to own the emotions. Our kids are growing up in this. Moving on, okay. Okay, so in the past 6 years, 2012, about 50% of our kids had access to smartphones, social media. In 2015, 72%. Today, I think 100% of our kids have access. And it's interesting. This happened over the past 6 years. So what does this mean? From 2010 to 2015, survey said 35% of our teens felt alone and a burden, symptoms of suicide. At the same time, you guys, you're tired and angry. Suicide in general surged 23%. Suicide for teens, 31%. They say in the past 19 years, 39%. And those numbers aren't accurate. Who's to say a drug overdose is not a suicide attempt? Who says a vehicular accident is not a suicide attempt? It's risky behavior maybe, and they didn't care. Also, a parent can decide to say, well, it was an accidental death. It really depends on what they put on the death certificate. But I'll tell you this. Every single night, 1 out of 300 kids goes to bed seriously contemplating wanting to end their lives. Last year, we had over 168,000 people brought into an emergency room with a failed suicide attempt. Of that 170,000, 35% will try again and will succeed. 168,000 failed suicide attempt. Statistically, 35% will try again and will succeed. And I'm going to say this, I'll say this a couple times. Parents, I need you to take all signs seriously. I don't want you to think, you know what, she's 15 years old. 15-year-olds, they say these things. Don't you self-diagnose your child. I know you know your child the best, but take all warnings seriously. And in common sense, you might say, you know what, that's not a healthy thought. Red flag, do something. Do something. Well, Jeff, what do I do? Say something. I mean, a lot of parents that just, well, I don't know what to say, so I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to have to talk about you. Well, Jeff, how do I say something? How you say it is not nearly as important as that you say it. You know what all of this is? This is about relationships. I want you to strive to be that mom or that dad where if your child is struggling, Mom, can we talk? And then, yeah, you're like, sure. And we're saying, Mom, I'm just really struggling. I'm taking like 3 AP classes. I'm at the point where like I'm failing. I didn't go today because my anxiety. And instead of judging them, well, honey, what do we need to do? Okay, so why don't you go talk to the guidance counselor tomorrow? And after you talk to the guidance counselor, I can call the guidance counselor for you and say, we're really struggling here. But I'll tell you something that's happening in these well-to-do communities with these high expectations. At the beginning of the year, as a counselor, we'll say, you know, your daughter, she's taking all these classes. This is a lot for her. No, we know better. Oh, she needs to do this because she needs to get this scholarship, get into that. And then all of a sudden, we get 3 weeks in. Now we're finding out there's a problem. This is overwhelming. And now we react and say, what are you going to do? We need to do something. Because, no, why don't we listen when we have the chance to? Can I ask you a question? What do you want for your child? Yeah, that's so cute. What? You hold on. What's your name?
It's Katie.
Katie?
Yes.
I'm Jeff. Nice to meet you.
Jeff, nice to meet you too.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
As I ask you this question, Katie, I want you to pay no attention to anyone in this room.
Okay.
You have children?
I have 2.
I'm sorry. I mean, that's great. Awesome.
No.
This is me, you, me. This is my heart, your heart, my heart. Pay no attention.
Okay.
And as you answer this, I don't want you to be honest with me. I want you to be honest with yourself. And as I ask you this question, every person in this room is going to ask themselves the same question. Here's the question. Have you ever looked in the mirror?
Yes.
Sure. Have you ever looked in the mirror and not liked that reflection that looks back?
Absolutely.
Do you think everybody in this room deals with self-doubt?
At one point or another in your life, absolutely.
Here's the question, Katie. Tonight, you go home. By time as a mom, you get in bed, it's midnight. You're putting on your pajamas. You You go in the bathroom. You shut the door behind you, Katie, and you're brushing your teeth. And you look in the mirror. And the reflection looks back. Here's the question. Do you see a beautiful woman on the inside as the whole world sees you, Katie, on the outside? That's the question.
You want my answer?
Yeah.
I gave up a long time ago caring what people think,
That's not what I asked.
but that plays into, I don't really care how people see me because I see myself as an awesome person.
Let me ask the question again. Do you see a woman as beautiful on the inside as the whole world sees you on the outside? Do you see it?
Do I see myself as a beautiful person?
Katie, why are you making this difficult?
Because I'm dense.
No, you're not. Let's go with this. I ask that question every day. As I ask that question, the answer I get is no. I don't know. Sometimes. I think as we get older, we care less. True. But our kids, what is the number one need for all of us? Acceptance. And so we look in the mirror, how's my hair look? How's my makeup? People are going to judge me. What are my clothes? Are they matching? I want us as parents, when we talk about that self-esteem, how can you get your child to look in the mirror and care less about how they look and to care more about who they are? Because wouldn't you agree that when we take care of who we are, how we look takes care of itself? I love that you said that. So we're talking about happiness, and what you said was so beautiful. I want my child to look in the mirror and love that reflection that looks back. But we can't expect our children to have what we struggle even having. We can't expect them to do what we're unwilling to do of ourselves. So we have to be in our right frame of mind, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, to expect them to have that healthy mindset. Katie, I love that you said that. And so you, young lady, you say happiness. So what is happiness?
I think it ties into everything that you just said. It's confidence within yourself, right? Strong self-esteem and
Sure.
success.
What's success, sir? What would you say success is? I mean, you live in a beautiful community. I think everybody wants to be successful. What is success? Let me tell you from a man that lives with mental illness. Where are you going? I'm kidding, I'm kidding. You got to break the ice sometimes. Katie, shush, no one's talking to you. Y'all think you would come and have this depression talk and all that. I'm so grateful you guys came out. We all want to arrive at this place called the destination, where we look back in our lives, we retire, we've had this happiness and success, and now we can embrace life. My parents just lost everything in the hurricane. We lost 3 houses. We lost 3 cars, including a Ferrari. Our boat sunk. My house, I'm fine. I was talking to my mom as she was evacuating, and I said, she actually called me first. She said, you guys are going to evacuate. What's in your hurricane kit? What are you taking? I said, Mom, I can't get home. You know what? Actually, I'm good. I'm good. I said to my mom, I said, what do you got? She said, I got all my pictures. It's funny, my parents are in their mid-70s. My grandmother's 95. They've arrived at the destination, and then a hurricane came and wiped out everything. We have insurance. They're going to rebuild. Everything's going to be okay. As a man that lives with mental illness, I've learned to not live for the destination, the journey. So every single day, it's the wins, the losses, the highs, the lows, the ups, the downs. And so there's 3 questions that I've come to learn to ask every day. So when I go back to my hotel tonight, lay my head in the pillow, I ask 3 questions, and I challenge you these 3 questions. Question number 1, is my life meaningful? What does that mean? I have a loving, unconditional family. That's meaning. Meaning for us is different for our kids. Question number 2, is my life fulfilling? Are you listening? Thank you. And so when I go lay my head in the pillow tonight, I'm thinking, you came, I know you're busy, you've got your life, you listened to me. My heart is full. Number 3 is my life rewarding. I got to come to Dallas, Texas, to Coppell High School. You guys showed up. It's rewarding. And here's the question. Did you say yes to all 3 of those for you in your personal life? How about you? Don't answer it. I know there's many of you in here that you're not saying yes to all 3. And so I want to ask you, like I would ask our kids, what do you need to do? Because nothing changes if nothing changes. What do you need to do to make a change? Now for us, well, Jeff, I mean, I can't necessarily make a change. I have family, I have kids, my husband, my job. This would affect everything. But your kid is 16 years old. For them to make a change, what change? Well, I got to hang out with people that are a bit more supportive of me. Oh, no. And so we want happiness, we want success, but what really is it? Our kids are in this race to arrive to what? The stress we're putting on them. You go to school, do good. Go to college and do good and then get a job and invest in your 401k and retire. But the expectation is there, but the world isn't like that anymore. And so they do that maybe. They do good. They work hard. They go to college. They do good. They get a job and they're doing good. And then it's like, now what? Now what? Now what? Is it titles? Or is it testimonies? You might want your kid to be a doctor. Yay. Do they want to be a doctor? And at the end of their lives, they start to figure things out and they die. Life, we learn every single day. It's the process. But in the process, I think it's about being patient. Perfection doesn't exist. Where are we getting this? In journals, suicide letters, that's one of the most common things. If I can't be perfect, what's the point? Titles. I know that I'm in a community today in Highland Park and here where, hey, you're nobody unless you have these initials after your name. I don't want to come here if I have to have initials. I don't put initials on my stuff. I've got a couple of them, but they're stupid. I'm interviewing Fox Television to host a TV show about parenting. We spend about a half hour with, Jeff, what's your title? Like when people bring you in, what do they bring you in under? Like mental health professional, crisis intervention, mental health guy, doctor, therapist, CSP. I don't know. I'm Jeff. They're having trouble with this. When you go home tonight, are you going to talk about, oh, Jeff, he's a good therapist? Or are you going to talk about, he said these things that resonated with me? You see, the end has nothing to do with your titles, but everything has something to do with your testimony. And I think we're missing that. We're like, oh, I want my kid to have titles. I've got titles. You got to have titles. What about raising our children to be change agents in the world, their community, to be loving, to be kind, to be unconditional, to be compassionate, empathetic. I think that's what we need to start thinking about. Is my life meaningful, fulfilling, and rewarding? I don't know. I got mental illness. What do I know? 31% in the next 10 years, I promise you, you will see a 31% increase in teen suicide, drug and alcohol-related deaths. I promise you. I promise you. I just did a conference with Dr. Alex Crosby. He's with the Center of Disease Control and Prevention. We were at USC speaking together last weekend. He said the greatest population of suicide today is white males 35 to 50. I said to him, wow, time goes so fast. I said, Dr. Crosby, I said, so 35 to 50, I said, well, why? So they did this study that these suicides, let's like examine the brains, why? And then all of a sudden they see all this trauma. And so these are people that never dealt with their past. You know how many kids I meet? When I come into a school community, I usually come in for 15, 16. Oklahoma this morning just hired me for 3 days in a school population that has 1,900 in the whole population of the district, the school, the city. 3 days I'm going in. In those 3 days, I end up hearing about rape, sexual abuse. I dealt with a suicide in Texas that wasn't a suicide, it was staged. The brother admitted to me. I brought in the detective to reinvestigate. What was a suicide turned into a homicide. And so I find all this stuff out. Our kids have stories that need to be addressed. And so this whole thing about in 10 years, the suicide, the 35 to 50, the trauma. And I said to him, as Dr. Crosby and I are going back to the airport, he says, Dr. Crosby, so let me ask you something. If these people didn't deal with the pain, the rejection, the abandonment, the abuse, then it manifests itself and destroys them later, they make that forever decision to take their lives. I said, so I work with teenagers. So if schools really focus more on social emotional learning, and we're encouraging our kids that it's okay to reach out and have a trusted adult. And so if we keep continuing on that path and the kids address these issues today, when they're 35 and 50, now all of a sudden they have coping skills, problem-solving skills, self-esteem. He said, well, exactly. But how are our kids going to talk if we are like, no, we don't talk about mental illness? I think we all need to open up more and be so supportive and encouraging, and it's okay, and I got a lot more to go through. Okay. Let me tell you why our kids want to end their lives. They have a feeling that I'm alone, which represents a belief on the part of the individual that they don't have any meaningful relationships. And when you look at it, when they're doing this more than 4 or 5 hours a day, they don't have meaningful relationships. The I'm a burden represents a belief on the part of the individual that they feel that they serve as a liability. They're not making any notable contribution to the world. And so when they're doing this 4 or 5 hours a day or more, and you're saying, you know what, I'm disappointed in you. You know what, you need to get more involved. You need to pick up your grades. Like, Mom, just leave me alone. I just want a game. Of course they don't feel like they're making any contribution. And now they feel they're a burden because you're telling them that I'm disappointed in you. And so here's what happens when you have the I'm alone, I'm a burden, day after day, week after week, month after month. It keeps going. It doesn't seem to end. Now you have that capability, the desire for suicide. Teenagers don't want to die. But with them living in the here and the now, they see a solution to their problems that is so far out there that in the here and the now, they're not patient enough to say, just breathe. It will be okay. One step at a time, 1 minute, one meal at a time. And if we're trying to fix it, If we're not validating the thoughts and feelings, they're not going to come to us. This just builds up. And suicide today, in many cases, it's an immediate reaction to an emotion that may have just something just happened. That's why we're like, Jeff, there's no notes left behind. Nobody knew anything. I think that's what we got to be really careful about. I'm alone. Why? You're telling me you go to a school of 3,000 kids and a kid feels alone? I'm a burden? How does a child feel that they're a burden? Because when you don't have this social interaction, you don't have coping skills or problem-solving skills, your confidence. I was at Highland Park High School. I walked in, beautiful school. I go in the cafeteria, must have been 700 kids, all sitting at tables. I see everybody on their phone. Going back to, well, Jeff, you said earlier you think schools should ban phones. Yeah. Because I think you should force them to be more interactive in school. That's school spirit. That's our school community. That's our school culture. Let's work things out. Let's build relationships. But you know why we don't? Because you would flip out on them. I need to get in touch with my child. Well, you know what? If you need to get in touch with your child, then just call the main office, and we have people. We'll go get a message. If your kid needs to get in touch with you, they can come to the main office and use the phone. Why do you need so bad to get in touch with your child? Well, what if they forgot their lunch? Oh, no. Well, what if they forgot their gym clothes? Well, they get a 0. My kid can't get a 0. Why? Why? Don't you think if your kid forgot their lunch and they had no lunch, they're going to learn pretty quick not to forget their lunch? Well, Jeff, my kid's going to starve. No, they won't. No, they won't. You know, when I was growing up, where's Jeff? School. Where do you think he is? Oh, that makes sense. Just school. Your kids at school with trusted adults. You don't need to be the helicopter parent that is fixing everything for them. Because you know what you're doing? You're hurting them. You're not helping them. I'm generalizing, not picking on you. Ask any teacher about the loss of their phone. Blah, blah, blah. You know that. Yeah, bullying inside. I hear that all the time. Well, so-and-so took their life because people are bullying them. Shut up. I'm sorry, that wasn't nice. Very rarely is suicide the cause of one thing. Bullying and cyberbullying could certainly be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But I want to say, if your child is being bullied, then I want to look more at coping skills, problem-solving skills, self-esteem. And the other thing, too, I think we need to be a little bit less sensitive. It's not so much bullying that concerns me as much as the cyberbullying. Kids hiding behind a computer, kids creating these rumors, them posting stuff on. Our kids, 24/7, 365. So you know what? Turn your phone off for a week. You know what I spend a lot of time doing? I delete people. Jeff, I'm your mother. I know. Well, you need to be deleted a long time ago. Why? Mom, all you do is post Amber Alerts. Honey, I'm helping people. Mom, the Amber Alert was in Alaska. You live in North Carolina. What's the get? That was probably a bad example, but my mom has gotten old and is just like, you know those people. Again, 90% of suicide comes back to mental illness, depression. Or I'm just going to say anxiety being too much, their coping skills, their problem-solving skills, the expectations are too high, or just the stress. If I'm not perfect, where does that come from? We got to know the definition about bullying before we start attacking it. I just lost 100 pounds. Now, let me tell you why. I had to go through a nerve conduction test. My diabetes, out of the world. I remember I take this nerve conduction test, and the doctor comes in and he says to me, "You're fat." I know, we'd be offended. It took that doctor to say to me, I'm fat, for me to stop looking in the mirror and saying, I'm not fat, I'm big, I play football. I'm 47 years old. At what point do you stop saying I play football? That's like your kid's 16 years old. At what point do they stop complaining that you as their parent tighten their diaper too tight? It took that doctor to say that to me, for me to look in the mirror and say, you know what, you're right, I am fat. But if I got offended, oh, the doctor's a jerk. If my kid came, Dad, everybody's making fun of me. Honey, why are they making fun of you? They tell me I smell. Honey, when was the last time you took a shower? Thursday? You know, you probably do smell. Get your butt upstairs with soap and water on your butt. Sometimes our kids are telling kids what they need to hear, but yet they're taking it as a verbal attack. And you as parents are like, you know what? No child should be mean to children. I don't disagree with you, but kids are mean. Kids are hateful. Self-esteem would be, I wish I was as perfect as you. But you know what? No matter what you say to me, I'm always going to think you're awesome. How do you come back from that? You can't allow people to have that power over you. We're all on our own journey. And this kid that's making fun of you, ask that kid who's the hardest person to get to know. They say, myself. And yet, we pick on people to build ourselves up to show that we're better by comparison. Self-esteem. Let's keep going. Self-esteem, value, self-attitude, choices, rights and privileges, expectations. You ever been disappointed? Where's that come from? Failed expectations. What if we replaced expectations for gratitude? What if you stopped having an expectation for your child and you started focusing more on the objective? Get to bed on time, show up on time, do the best you can, take responsibility, and if they fail, put the responsibility back where it belongs. They're going to stop failing, or they're just not going to care, and they're going to figure that out real quick. 3 things I think our kids need. Sleep, 8 hours. Your kids need 8 hours of sleep, and if they're ugly, they need more. Number 2, nutrition. I'm not saying if your kid's ugly, maybe they have an ugly attitude. Number 2, nutrition. Sugar and depression, they're like best friends. They hang out. Less soda, more water. Less Lunchables, more protein. Nutrition, big thing, huge. Number 3, little bit less smartphone, a little bit more social interaction. Wow, that would be awesome. 24/7, 365, I think we need to mandate off time. Sunday in the summer, don't call me. I'm on the boat. My phone is off. Someone asked me recently, Jeff, what if you have a crisis? Should have happened yesterday. You know what I learned? That's self-care. You can't pour from an empty pitcher. I think as parents, you need to have self-care. No, I'm a mom, I don't have time. That's selfish. I honestly think it's selfish if you don't do it. Put yourself first. And then go be the best mom, go be the best dad, go be the best husband, go be the best wife. But I think you can do that better when you have taken care of yourself. Kids sleep with their cell phones. No, put it down in the living room, charge it. (2010, 2018), more teens depressed, greater anxiety, trouble communicating, withdrawal, isolation, hopelessness. Suicide is the solution. I talked about that. Kids, I don't think they want to die. Suicide is a permanent action. It's just a temporary situation. It's going to be okay. Teen depression. I think it's 11 to 24. It used to be like they said 13 to 18. Our kids are not wanting to adult at 18 anymore. I think it's around 24. But the expectation is, you know what, they need to go to college at 18. Why? I'm pro-education, but they're not ready. And so if they graduate and they're still trying to figure out who they are, now all of a sudden they don't want to work in that major, or they can't get a job. Our kids can have 7, 8 different careers in their lifetime. Matter of fact, corporate America is not even saying so much as to where'd you go to college, as much as they're starting to say, what did you do? My son, Devin, got hired by NASA before he graduated from Clemson. And he said to them, I want to finish my last year. They waited for him. He finished with a master's in mathematics and a master's in computer science. He's been there now for 2.5 years. Google is now interviewing him. I think it's less about, I asked this to Highland Park today, all the student council. I didn't speak to the kids like I am here. I said to all the student council, I said, how many of you would admit that you're lazy? All of them raised their hands. I said, how many of you read about 15 minutes a day? None of them raised their hands. These are your kids too. Your kids were not born to be average. They're choosing to be average. I want them to pick up a book 15 minutes a day. In 1 year, they've read 18 books. And the books they need to be picking up are the books that are inspiring them, that are giving them a purpose for something. The emotional, physical, psychological, social changes. Now you add the smartphones and social media on top of that. You can imagine these kids are confused. Neurotransmitters. This is like, whoa, something happens and all of a sudden it shakes up everything in the brain. I think this neurotransmitters, the neurons, if we take time out, self-care, I think we can restore the chemicals that are in the body. But we have to have balance and boundaries. We have to be cognizant of the things that are shaking things up. Depression strikes about 3 out of 9. I think it's really like, yeah, it's pretty accurate, I think. Again, it's just bigger than clinical depression. Stress, anxiety. Now I think we're about 5 out of 10. Right here, self-destructive behaviors, risk-taking, cutting, self-harm, substance abuse, even suicide. Is cutting wrong? Sure. But you know what I like about cutting? That's your child asking for help, but they don't know how to ask for help. And when you get to that point, don't flip out. You should celebrate that. I mean, not like we're going to have a party, but I think you celebrate that like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. Honey, can I give you a hug? That's like this major red flag where like, we need to address this. There's something deeper here that's bigger than us. I meet so many kids that, I met a girl who had a failed suicide attempt in Indiana late last year. And after I talked, she said, I want to go talk to him. So we sat down. I said, why didn't you ask for help? She said, nobody asked me. Well, how are we supposed to ask you if we don't know? Our kids are struggling. And they need you. They need you to not be so judgmental. Also, I think therapy versus medication. Therapy, I think, is more important because it teaches you to overcome, to process, to respond, to, here's something I learned. I'm 47. My bipolar, I'll tell you real quick. And again, if you have to leave, you're not going to offend me. It's okay. But I am going to speak until I'm done, but I'm going to be respectful of your time. It was about April last year. I don't share this much. And on Sunday afternoon, I got so angry at my wife, Janet. I don't know why. I threw my Yeti across the room, put like a dent in the wall. I haven't had an anger episode like that in like 20 years. I was scared. to the emergency room that night. This morning, I said, I am so good with my medication. And I woke up next morning, what the heck happened? So I'm going through all my medication, and I realized that for some reason, I forgot to take my Lexapro. Folks, I like me on medication. I don't like me off it. I call the doctor right away, and I get back with them a couple days. I'm doing fine. Here's what I'm trying to say. As a result of this, I'm meeting my therapist, and she said, Jeff, when you get to that point and you're about to explode, and if I explode, I don't care. F you, F this, F him, I don't care. I don't care. My therapist said, Jeff, when you get to that point and you have that very short window, I want you to ask this question. How can I fix this? So I tried it. And so oftentimes when I get to that point, I just say, how can I fix this? But it's not my fault. But it might not be your fault, but that doesn't mean it's not your responsibility. You see, a divorce might not be your fault. Abuse might not be your fault. The death of a loved one might not be your fault. But our responsibility is, how do you pick yourself up and move forward now? And you do that by asking for help. I think that's where therapy comes in. Versus medication, I think kind of puts a Band-Aid on things. Now, if you're under the care of a doctor, and I know, well, we over-medicate our kids. That's your fault. Because I think we need to be the best advocate for our kids, for ourselves, have a journal. My doctors trusted me. I show up with a journal. My doctors, they give me the medication that I tell them they need to prescribe me. They're like, Jeff, you know more about this than we do. And I've also had such a great relationship with them. Now, the point I'm trying to make, therapy, well, why won't we go to therapy? Risk versus reward. And what's the downside? Well, I want to make the commitment. Who said there's a commitment? Well, I don't want to take medication. Why? Risk versus reward. Well, I don't like how it makes me feel. Oh, so you'd rather just be miserable? Well, no. If you're under the care of a professional doctor, preferably a mental health doctor, the combination is great. Here's a lot of kids today are self-medicating. When you're self-medicating, that totally just throws away therapy and medication. I know some, well, not my kid. No, it is your kids. They call it fishbowl parties, Skittles parties. They go in your cabins or grandparents, and they take Parkinson's medication and blood pressure, and they put it in a bowl, and all this medication, and they don't even know what they're taking. So you'll take this blood pressure, you're going to take Parkinson's. Another kid is taking blood pressure, Parkinson's, anti-anxiety, and Viagra, and they're mixing it with... Thought that was funny. You didn't have to think that was funny. And then all of a sudden, they don't realize what they're taking, and they don't even think about it. That's what our kids are doing. And so they're self-medicating because they're not reaching out, because they don't have trusted adults they can confide in. Let me keep going. I don't want to. That's my dog. You guys are looking at that and saying, that's cute. You know why I look at that? Because that's my toolbox. That's therapy for me. Because I'm not home, and I'd love to be with my dog. I don't even like people, really. When I'm home, I want to, so when I see that, I'm like, it's my dog. Anyway. You know what I love about dogs? The greatest unconditional love in the world. Like, think about it. I can take you and you, no, never mind. I could take you and my friend Katie and Sugar, my dog, and I could put the three of you in a trunk of a car. I mean, I wouldn't do that. It's not funny, sir. And 30 days later, I can come and open the trunk. Who'd be happy to see me? Thought that was funny. If you notice 4 of 5 of these symptoms in a 2-week period, 4 or 5 in a 2-week period, boom. And some of you are like, well, Jeff, that's my kid. Here's the thing. You can take pictures, but I want you to concern yourself less with this and more with, if my child doesn't seem right, say something. Saying something is more important than how you say something. If you suspect there's a red flag, and some people say, well, Jeff, if I address it, I'm going to put an idea in their head. No. If the moment you think about asking the question, they say they've already thought about taking their life. Don't be afraid to just ask the question. And asking the question should be as easy as, you want to get pizza? Maybe because I work in this field, but it's like this. Do I need to worry that you might be suicidal? Mom, no. Or here's a better question. I'm concerned about you. Do you sometimes, you seem really sad, depressed. Do you wish you can go to sleep and never wake up? That's a safe question. And they might say, yeah. Now that's a red flag. And then if you hear that, then go right into it. And you might say, well, Jeff, how do I just ask the question? And get down their level and say, this is a really hard question, but I want to ask you this, and you can be honest with me. Is there any way that you might be thinking about wanting to end your life? Be non-judgmental, be at the same level. Give them permission. You're going to be patient, non-judgmental. I talked about all that. You know what to do. So if you suspect that, boom, question, red flag. Now you have major depression. We kind of know what that is. You can have this bout, and all of a sudden it goes away, I'm fine for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a year, and then it comes back. So we know what major depression. I think one of the things that we're not really diagnosing enough of is dysthymia. And I'll tell you why we're not diagnosing it. Because we don't know. How are we supposed to diagnose a child if they're not asking for help? And so kids are just, I don't know what's wrong. It's this very low-level depression that they don't even know that they're depressed. It's just, they get tired with being tired. They get miserable with just being miserable, but they're not saying anything. If they don't say anything, we can't diagnose it. Or better yet, they might suspect it, but you're like, you know what, you're a teenager. No, I don't need to go to the doctor. Why? I think dysthymia is something very real. And our kids are getting miserable, being miserable, and they get so tired of it that this can simply lead to, I'm just not happy. And they want to end their lives. If you suspect something's not right, call your doctor. Call the guidance counselor. Stop out here, meet with the counselors. Pick up one of these forms and say, instead of waiting till the fall, can I reach out to someone and see if this is something I need to be concerned about now? Call the school counselors. They're going to be like, absolutely, let's look into this. Yeah. Then you have just so many. Divorce, changing schools, rejection, adjustment disorder, having to adjust to a different situation. Now there's treatment for depression. Treatment, medication, the combination, epidemic, clues and warning signs. Folks, let this just be common sense. Again, if you think, take action. You have direct verbal clues. You know what? I'm done. I'm just going to kill myself. Red flag, take action. Do not even play with that. Are you overreacting? Probably. I'd rather you overreact than let it go. You have indirect verbal clues. I'm tired of life. You see this on social media. They post music lyrics. There's something within that that's making them feel. So it's not direct. It's kind of indirect. It's like, I wonder. Yes, take action. Then you have behavioral clues. This is how they're behaving. It could be a previous attempt. They're acquiring guns, co-occurring depression, putting affairs in order, giving away, sudden interest or disinterest in religion, drugs, unexplained anger. There's a behavior. Well, that's not my child. That's a red flag. And then you have situational. which is a situation, maybe the loss of a cherished therapist, maybe the loss of a teacher, the loss of a friend, maybe a failed grade, or I'm disappointed in you. I didn't get accepted to my college. The pressure. And it's so bad. I had a school in Indiana, school business administrator, got caught embezzling money. They fired her. 41 minutes later, she took a gun to her head. Her son, a high school senior, that night killed himself. At 9 p.m., the husband, 3 of them back to back. One situation prompted another one. So you have direct verbal, you have indirect, you have behavioral, you have situational. Okay, boom, boom. Causes, this is simple. Depression. Well, how do we know if we're depressed if we're not reaching out? We got to encourage our kids, it's okay to talk. Divorce, violence, inability, feelings of worthlessness, rejection, substance abuse, death of someone, suicide of a friend online, disappointment. We're done. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.